says, get that India. Big boy.
Call an ambulance! Maybe call a police! Oh, what a shot! What a shot! Campbell killer!
Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Tip Sheet Podcast. As always, I'm your host, John, also known as 4020. Joining me to preview all of the action out of round 19 in the Jersey Flegg, New South Wales Cup and NRL, as well as an NRLW trial, is my good mate Sixties. Much better weather today, mate, but how you holding up as we get ready for a very, very important Saturday of football?
Mate, it's a big weekend coming up because we've got that NRLW trial on Friday night out at Eric Tweedale Stadium, the old Granville Park. So there might be plenty of Eels supporters out there joining me to watch the NRLW have their first hit out and get a bit of an idea about what their team structure might look like. As you said, a big day trying to cover three grades of football. Unfortunately, that timeline with the Jersey Flegg leading into the New South Wales Cup, it does make it
just so
really difficult for us. But yes, it's a big weekend ahead. We've been certainly flat out on TCT. But as always, mate, a shout out to our sponsors, Big Swing Golf, Northmead, and also Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan, Parramatta, for their support of what we do on the Cumberland Throw. It makes it possible for us to do what we do. And then, of course, a big shout out to the home of the Eels, Parramatta Leagues Club. We are back there. We're privileged to be back there, as we always are, on match days to present our post-match instant reaction podcast live from Jack's Bar and Grill on the third floor in Parramatta Leagues Club. After the game, come back there, help us celebrate an Eels victory over the Warriors, have a feed, a few drinks, listen to lots of footy talk, and it will be basically a celebration of the Parramatta Eels anytime we're back there in Parramatta Leagues Club in Jack's Bar and Grill.
Yes, sir. And before we get into our preview 60s, there's a bit of a breaking and developing story, sort of post-news podcast for us in the clash between the governing body of the NRL and the RLPA as that CBA, the Collective Bargaining Agreement negotiations, break down. And the latest turn is that the RLPA has mandated that all players are to suspend game day media activities. So no interaction with Nine, Fox, any of the printed press or anything like that. So no pre-game, no halftime, no post-game interviews. Coaches are still on the table because they're obviously not part of the RLPA. But yeah, what do we make of this as the breakdown between the two parties? And apparently it's not about the overall money. I can't really find out where the RLPA have specified what they want. I was trying to read through some of their presses and debriefings, and I'm not really sure exactly what they're pushing for in terms of clauses and support for different tiers of players or competitions. But yeah, what do we make of this as the game now sort of, it's certainly not at peril in the short term, but there are some big questions now.
Well, first of all, man, damn this news cycle. We record our news podcast on a Tuesday evening after team lists have come out because we're expecting that a lot of the news would come out from the weekend across Monday and then into Tuesday with team lists. And then the last couple of weeks there's been big news that's broken on a Wednesday. Fit in with our schedule, people. That makes it a lot easier for us. But we couldn't ignore this because it is massive news in the world of rugby league. So people, yes, this is our preview podcast, but we very much need to talk about this. John, I've tried to look for those sorts of details as well. I can't find anything. Evidently, there's something like 100 points of difference between the NRL and the RLPA in terms of the CBA and what they're working towards with this agreement. I think looking at it, there's a couple of ways to look at this. First of all, maybe there's an aspect of confidentiality in those discussions where they're not really putting out the fine details of what they're disagreeing on. They've been very general in that, haven't they? Very non-specific in what they disagree on. But let me read something that is from the RLPA statement, and this is a little bit of a concern. It says, and this is I think Clint Newton? Is it?
Yeah, Clint.
Yeah, I'm just checking that it is from him. As I am fearful and concerned about the trajectory of our game, with all major stakeholder agreements unsigned, unresolved, and unannounced. These include the NRL and NRLW CBA, club licensing agreements, New South Wales Rugby League and QRL member agreements, NRL and NRLW grand final venue and location, and International Rugby League schedule and structure. Now, that's quite a list of things that aren't finalised at the moment, and I know that the CBA is just one of those, but he's at pains to point out that there's a lot of things that haven't been determined, and we've had plenty of discussion in the past about the grand final venues that just never seem to be agreed upon, and we always end up with the fans being held at ransom, where there's the threat to take the grand final away from Sydney. It's, most of the time, the things that upset me are where it impacts the supporters. And looking at the RLPA action in this instance with the media bans on match days, that's about as light on in terms of impact on supporters as you'd ever get any industrial action. Personally, I have no problem with them taking this level of industrial action, because the alternative, which is strike action, and I'm going to get your opinions on this in a moment, John, but that alternative, I mean, that's where you really cause disruption to fans, where you get a lot of emotions around what the players might be asking for. Now, I think the main thing that came out is that the NRL and the RLPA had agreed pretty much on player payments, and that's not the sticking point. It's other areas which I think relate a little bit to things like insurances and after and post-retirement stuff, and where game revenues are going. And I guess they're not looking at it in this. They're basically saying, look, we're not looking at getting this into players' pockets. We're looking at how the game is run and how players are impacted in terms of workloads, like how many games the NRL can schedule into a season, what's happening with insurances, what's happening for players who on average have a 40-game NRL career, what happens to them post-career, like a whole range of things that seems like there's a disagreement about. So, I mean, really, John, are you like disturbed by the fact that there's no pre-match or post-match interviews with players? Like, as far as I'm concerned, if you're going to take out something from the game, this is, as I said, this is about as light on as it can get. And the ones that seem to be the most upset are the media. And I guess my only advice to people listening to this is you're going to get your news via the media, and it's the media that are the ones right now that are the most impacted. So bear that in mind.
If I'm going to be brutally honest, Sixties, the whole idea of taking away game day media as your big, middle finger to negotiations getting stored, it just comes across as soft. And I imagine that part of that would be that they're trying not to hurt the primary stakeholders of the game, which is us, the consumers, the supporters. But if you're going to make a move and you truly think, honest to goodness, that your plight, your argument, your stance is the right one, and you're being wronged by the governing body between the NRL and whatever. What do they call it? The what's the expanded body of the NRL that they always like to throw out that Volandis was part of? The commission, the NRL commission, or whatever it is. Then you got to take serious action, and you don't do that right now. But yeah, yes, it sucks for fans, but you got to commit to it and double down, and that would mean a lockout next year that we don't.
Yep, I was about to say, where do you see this heading? If you're saying that the RLPA are going relatively soft.
Yeah, I mean,
now in the terms of industrial action, and I agree with that on you. I don't want to see strike action, but you're basically saying if they're serious, if the NRL aren't coming to the party, that you can foresee that there would be a lockout, that there would be a strike action, that sort of industrial action for the start of next season if the two parties can't come together. And
that's why it makes this action look almost comical, because what are you achieving with this? You know, you're mildly inconveniencing the media, who they're not the independent arbiters here, and they've certainly, got their part to play in why there might be some disenfranchisement with the players. But yeah, if I were them, I would be playing through right now with no changes, but just tell the NRL, look, we need to get this done because we will take actual action next year.
Well, it's interesting that Andrew Abdo talked about the media as being the storytellers of our game, and
that's not necessarily a positive thing.
Yeah, it's. I guess story is interesting because we talk about narratives, media narratives, in how things are spun, and we're not throwing that out there at all of the media. Like,
no, 100%. Like, there is plenty of good reporting that goes out there, but we're not so naive as to think that there isn't agendas and narrative that form a significant portion of the digestible media as well. Yes,
absolutely. And I think I'm just trying to think who it was that spoke, whether it was, I can't remember whether it was on the news or on 360, about they don't really get great access to players now anyway.
Bulldog Richie, I think it was.
Bulldog Richie, yeah, that it was controlled by the clubs. There are only select players that would be put out for media access every week, and it's not really impacting their ability to do their job as such. But if that's the case, geez, they're putting on a bit of a show about this at the moment. It's a big talking point, and I guess from that perspective, it's a talking point because it's that soap opera drama of rugby league where there's always something that's going on. But as you said, in terms of impact on the followers of the game, it is going quite soft, and that's, look, you know what? I'm not looking at that as a criticism of the RLPA here. I think they're trying to look after the people who are the lifeblood of the game, which is the supporters, because without supporters, there isn't a professional version of the game.
And
it's as simple as that.
On that note, 60s, if they do follow this path to its natural conclusion, which would be a lockout, I hope they do a better job articulating the why the NRL and the RLPA are so far apart when it comes to this agreement. If it is about player pensions and insurance and whatnot, and because they are important things, like that is absolute, dotting your I's and crossing your T's in the contract stuff, that is very important, and they should articulate that to the supporters. So the supporters aren't just going to say, well, these players are bloody greedy, holding out for more money, even though we know that financially it's not the cap being set at a certain point that's the issue here. So go out there and articulate it better, whether it's...
Yeah, and also too, like they are concerned about the number of games they could be asked to play in a year, be it the NRL Premiership or extended representative seasons and things like that.
Very fair point.
They want to stay in that. And it is a fair point, because if you're working in any industry, you go in there with a fair idea about what's required in your day. Now, obviously, there are certain executive positions in any business where your standard day is not a standard day. You'll work on whatever hours are needed to get the job done, and that's probably even more true for people who are self-employed. Like you're getting your job done, you're working the hours that are needed to get the job done, and it's there are so many occupations out there that are not standard 9 to 5. Rugby league players are not standard 9 to 5, but they are involved in a lot that comes outside of standard work. They're outside of they've got their training, they've got the extra little commitments that are involved. In essence, I guess the high profile players, they're literally on duty 24 hours a day. They can't go out without being seen to be on duty, and they're certainly well remunerated for that. But it's a life or a lifestyle that not many of us can identify with, because maybe for some of us we see the privileges that come their way, and we look at that, and then probably the majority of us cannot see the challenges that they face, where aspects of their life are no longer their own, where they are in the spotlight to such a degree that every little thing that they do has the microscope put over it. And I guess there's never going to be a true understanding of fans understanding what's involved in being a rugby league player, and a rugby league player not truly being able to understand how fans might perceive things that happen. I think there's a gap there that will probably never quite be bridged. But in this instance, I truly believe that the RLPA has put the fans, first and foremost in their mind in this industrial action, because it is soft. And I hope it doesn't come to that strike action that you feel, John, is the only way that they're going to get their message across, if it's truly
if they're that far apart. 100%, yeah. If it is,
and as you said, it's really important when it gets to that it's articulated just what are the big issues for them, because again, where we've tried to do our due diligence in talking about this, we've tried to dig up as much as we can that's available to everyone. Like we haven't gone and spoken to anyone in Clubland or in the players group or anything like that, because that's not our job as fans. We're going off what we can find out there. And if we can't, with quick Google searches, with quick perusal of media, find anything out there that says what are the big sticking points, and really, and not have it in business or any sort of jargon.
Yeah, corporate law, like sort of legalese.
Yeah. Like if in plain English, what are the sticking points? If we don't know what are the sticking points, it's impossible for us to really jump on one side or the other in our support of what's going on. So the RLPA can get out there and say they have their concerns, etc., etc., etc. Andrew Abdo and the NRL can come out and say, well, really this shouldn't be happening because blah 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 blah. But they're not really telling us, why the RLPA can't come to the table with them at the moment. Like it's one of those things where, as I said, right now, as far as I'm concerned, is my consumption of the weekly NRL product being impacted by this RLPA decision? Probably 99% no, it's not being impacted by it. So, is it a storm in a teacup at the moment? I think from a fan's perspective it is. From an RLPA and NRL perspective, it's not a storm in a teacup. It's perhaps that first step, that dipping the toe in the water, as we've spoken about, from rugby league terms. Maybe this is the RLPA. They're dipping their toe in the water with it now. Like, you know what? We're prepared to do something right now, and we've got a sequence of actions that might follow from there if we don't get this, put together right now. If we can't come to the table, so for now, pretty reasonably soft. It's not affecting us. I guess the only thing is if they feel that it's impacting the media enough that the media are they're a big part of the NRL's revenue stream. Maybe they're hoping that the media puts the pressure on the NRL, but at the moment it seems like the media is standing by the NRL and not the RLPA. So, yeah, I guess we watch this space now and see how long this ban goes on and whether the two parties can come together and start negotiations again.
Mm-hmm.
So, I guess there's not really too much more we can say other than if they don't get it together, as you suggest, we might be looking at lockouts at the start of next season.
Yeah, a lot of time to flow between here and then. But yes, that could be the natural course of where this all is if the two parties cannot reach an accord. But let's talk some Parramatta football on a brighter note, 60s. And obviously we've got our usual Jersey Flegg New South Wales Cup and NRL previews in round 19 of the action. But before we get there, chronologically, the first game this week is actually an NRLW trial. Parramatta Eels hosting the St George Illawarra Dragons out at Eric Tweedale Stadium, a.k.a. Granville Park, I believe, 60s is what it was, right?
Yes.
Yeah, former Granville Park. It's been done up real nice, actually, and is going to be the home of the NRLW moving forwards, or at least until Kellyville is completed as a precinct. But this one starts at 7 p.m. and is a free 20-minute thirds or periods. And we don't have an official team list, but we do have a squad. So we've got some players we can talk about here, mate. Obviously, you talk about the high-profile players. Site favourite Kennedy Cherrington. She's going to be one of the players to watch. High-profile recruit Rachel Pearson and Elsie Albert. Halfback and prop forward. They're going to be, two of the leaders of this team, whether they've got the C next to their name or not. They're going to be senior high-profile players. But then you got a lot of new faces and young kids. Cassie Tohi Hiku, Rosemary Beckett. There are a couple of young guns from our pathways that we're keen to see take that next step this year. Ribby Jean Kennard's back. That's fantastic. Who you got your eyes on in this one, and what do you want to see out of? I mean, really, it's a historic moment for both the club and the NRLW. We got a preseason.
Yes, yeah, and it is interesting because it does give them an opportunity to see how their players function in, I guess, a genuine hit out. Now, last year we watched them have a inverted commas trial against the Parramatta Eels Jersey Flegg team, which was interesting to watch because there was a certain amount of contact in that game. It wasn't the Jersey Flegg team weren't going full pelt into their carries into the defence, but by the same token, I thought the NRLW were reasonably intent in their contact in the tackles. It's very difficult to get like that sort of two different genders in a match, males against females. But it was an interesting hit out to watch. Apart from that, they would bring in players from outside the NRLW team to help fill in the numbers so that you can get full opposed sessions. So I've seen some of that in pre-seasons, but yeah, this is now good that it's a full hit out. Mate, I guess the thing that I'm interested in is what Dean Witters is looking at for his starting spine this year, because that's where there's a major change in the team. So we're really talking about a brand new spine. And I know we saw a little bit of Ruben Cherrington last year, but she's now like a frontline contender to be the starting dummy half in this season's team. And we can be reasonably assured that Rachel Pearson is going to be the halfback when it comes to
who partners
the
her.
team. Yeah.
Got,
but then we're looking at who's going to get the role at fullback.
Mm-hmm. We saw Cassie Tohihiku in the City vs Country. She looked pretty sharp in the number one. Does she assume those responsibilities for the club? In terms of 5'8", well, there's a little bit of care taken with the official titles given to the players because they don't necessarily cover all the roles they might play. But Pahuka Berryman Duff is listed as a 5'8" on the club roster. You've got Capri Paakau or Paakau. I'm sorry if I got that wrong, Capri, but she's listed as a dummy half option. So her and Ruben will be obviously competing for that starting number 9. But yeah, 5'8", fullback, number 9. There are some serious battles to be had here in terms of the roster construction and who gets the first look for round 1.
Yeah. So, and then of course, we know what players like Elsie Albert and Kennedy Cherrington are going to bring to that to the middle. I mean, we're talking about the physicality, the competitiveness, Elsie's long been regarded as one of the premier middle forwards, and has that real power game. Kennedy Cherrington is all energy, like she's in everyone's faces, the opposition faces, whether she's in her attack or defensive work. It's she's almost like the embodiment of the spirit within the team, the way that she plays the game out there. So as I said, we know the quality that those two players are going to bring, but how the pack assembles around them is going to be interesting. Look, with so many new faces, I'm just interested in getting out there and getting a first look at what the thinking is. It's pretty hard to do a preview on this in terms of what to expect in terms of the team, because we know with this being the trial, everyone's probably going to get a run.
Yeah.
And that's not too hard when you're talking about 25, 26 players. Maybe development squad players might get a bit of a hit out as well. I don't know. But we're going to see everyone get some minutes out there. So this is the best case scenario for supporters to be able to get an early look at what to expect from the NRLW team. I noticed that there was, we got emails today about getting tickets for the first clash with the West Tigers at CommBank Stadium. I think is it the 23rd of July? I think is that first match.
1 sec. NRLW is the 23rd of July. Yeah, round 1, 12 o'clock PM, CommBank Stadium versus West Tigers.
Yes, so we as I said, we received notification about getting tickets for that. If you're an NRLW member, as I am, it's you basically get a ticket for having your membership. So that, I think that's great value there. So so look, where we don't know what sort of coverage will be provided of the match, we will be out there with a live blog and doing our best to give you a bit of a rundown on the players that are taking the field. It's never easy trying to call the play or to give thoughts on every single player, especially if we're going to be looking at somewhere between 26 to 30 players under floodlight at Eric Tweedale Stadium. We'll be doing the best that we possibly can, but anyway, you'll be able to follow the action from that trial by following TCT on Friday night. The game kicks off at 7 p.m. And if you can't be there in person, as I said, hop onto the Cumberland Throw and we'll be providing our details on the match.
Yes, indeed. And that brings us to the 3 proper regular season games, starting with a 1:00 p.m. kickoff in the Jersey Flegg. It could have been a triple header, 60s. It could have been a triple header, but instead, our boys find themselves relegated to one of their old stomping grounds out at Ringrose Park, Wenty, aka the home of the mighty Chip Roll there, taking on the South Sydney Rabbitohs. And we're down a few troops this week because of the Origin selections for the New South Wales 19s. No Ethan Sanders, no Charlie Guymer, no Sam Tuivati. So we've got a couple of changes in the roster to accommodate those 3 losses. We start at fullback, new recruit Ethan Martin, who's had a really prolific start to his career as an Eel. He'll be at fullback this week. On the flanks, you've got Komalafe and Terrell Williams. Richard Penasini and Lockie Blackburn are in the centres. Eric Tweedale moves from fullback to 5'8" as he covers Ethan Sanders' departure. Josh Lynn will work with him in the halves. In the front row, Noah Reid and Lance Lima are the starting bookends. Matty Arthur in at dummy half. I still don't know how he can get picked in that team, 60s. But speaking of don't know how they can get picked, Saxon Pryke's a lock forward. And then on the edges, you've got Jock Brazel and Will Latu. So Jock coming back to Flegg this week to boost their playing stocks. On the interchange, Paddy Spence will be the utility. Larry Mwanga Tutia, Lachlan Mears Crab provide the big beefy boys for the middle. Araz Namva is the backline cover there. And then you've got big LeBron Tuala as the 18th man. And geez, that's good to see, isn't it? Yeah, he made his return from a very lengthy layoff last week in that development game. And now is right there in the mix for Flegg selection. So I really like to see that.
Yeah, and we did see some good energy from him in that development game. Probably, well, we've had the privilege of spending a bit of time with LeBron. He's quite a character. And I would imagine that the more time that he gets to spend with genuine training and not rehab, the more opportunities that he gets to play the game, he's going to be, well, I mean, it goes without saying that it's going to be beneficial for him, but I think it also is going to be beneficial for feeling like he's part of the club. And what I mean by that is he's come down from Queensland and he's had to spend such a significant amount of time rehabbing an injury. And footballers, they just want to get out on the field. They want to be able to mix with their mates in a game sense as well and be preparing for games, because in the context of training and match preparation, you're going to have times where it's just the players that are playing that are involved. Like you go to a captain's run and if they're just doing a traditional captain's run, you've really got the 17, 18 players that are going to be there on match day that are going to be out there in the prep. They're the ones spending that time together. I know Craig Brennan does a great job in looking to get all of the players as involved as possible. The way that he organises training and does his best to make all the players feel like that they are contributing to the team. But the reality is that there are players that are in the squad that don't get the game time. That's just a reality. It's like in the NRL. There are players in the top 30 that won't play NRL during the season. And look, that actually, without going too far off topic, I mean, that was one of my concerns when we used to field a team as Wenty, because the players in the NRL team that weren't playing first grade were then donning a different jersey and playing for the Wentworthville Magpies on the weekend. And my argument was always, you want to feel as if you're part of the organisation. How do you feel truly part of the organisation if you're wearing a different jersey? Now, there's no way around that with a team like the Flegg, because in their extended squad, they're going to have to go out there and run around for the likes of Parramatta, and I think it's Wenty, but I can't be sure. But I do know definitely Parramatta, that the players that are surplus to requirement on a weekly basis are running around playing Sydney Shield. So I'm glad that LeBron is closer to this, that if he's 18th man, that he's involved in the all the prep getting ready for this particular match. There's always the chance of being called in. You don't know what happens during the week. You could get, as we've already seen, players called up to New South Wales Cup level. at the last minute. There could be an injury at training. There could be someone's unwell. Next thing, Craig gets a phone call from Nathan Kalis. Sorry, I'm going to have to take, say Saxon Pryke from you.
Mm.
This week we're down a middle forward. We need him to come up and play, or we need to take Lance Fualima. So he doesn't know if he's going to get that. The players don't know that that's going to happen. Sometimes it happens the day before the match. So once you're starting to get to that eighth man position, you're going to be involved in match preps. You're going to be that much closer to getting a run. And let's hope that LeBron gets that time to get out on the field in Jersey Flegg, which sets him up then for next season, when he's probably more likely to be a regular fixture in the team.
Yep, and for our boys in this grade, I think they're technically 3 wins adrift of that top 5 berth right now, but the team in 5th, which is I believe is the Storm, have that game in hand. So realistically, you sort of set the line at 3.5 wins, right? Because there's that hypothetical 4th win there that could still be in between them. So they've got to get in their bikes if they want to, make it happen. It starts this week. They dropped the ball last week and need to bounce back quickly, and they're going to have to do it without some big players as well.
Yeah, just on last week, it was probably, it's going to sound harsh to say this, but it was probably the least effective performance from the spine that I've seen.
Very passive.
Yeah, I mean, it just was nothing like the performance the week before against the Sharks.
Mm-hmm.
I said that there wasn't, my first reaction was that there wasn't the composure or the discipline from the previous week, and I was trying to think, what was the reason around that, and essentially it was that, we probably saw, it wasn't that they played badly, but it was that they didn't play to their high standards as a group. So I'm looking. And it's not made easier then by the fact that they're going to be playing without Ethan Sanders this week. So, yeah, there's a challenge because you've got RLPA into the halves and Josh Lynn moving to halfback, RLPA to 5'8", which then takes him out of that fullback position. Be interesting to see how Ethan Martin goes moving from wing to fullback. I think fullback's his natural position. Matt Arthur will provide the sort of service that he always provides there. But we're still talking about anytime you've got a halfback out of their spot or a change in the fullback, it's a disruption. It's a natural disruption. And my goodness, there's been that many halves pairings and that many fullbacks that have been used this season due to circumstances beyond the coach's control. So, once again, another challenge. So without all their forwards being at full strength, they've got a big job to do.
Yeah, the pack's got to step up, create that platform alongside Matty Arthur, and give that makeshift spine the best chance possible to influence this game. But yeah, 1:00 p.m. out at Ringrose, 60s. Strictly speaking, you could do all 3 games, maybe, but you'd be rushing. And good luck getting the car park. Parramatta.
Yeah. Look, there's probably an associate or two of TCT that might rush out to Ringrose and then rush over to the stadium from there. But unfortunately, we're not going to fit into that category because we have our other commitments that we have at the Leagues Club. We're going to make sure that we are there for the New South Wales Cup game and the NRL game, and then of course for the post-match podcast. So that does necessitate us getting there and being in situ with all of our gear a little bit earlier than what we would like if we were rushing from one ground to the next.
Yes,
so,
indeed.
Yeah. So anyway, that now is a little bit. Oh, what's your call on this? How can the Eels get it done against the Rabbitohs?
Even without the players there, the talent is in this roster to get the win. And last time they played, almost I feel like this was like this might be like that karmic balancing game, because this was the game last time when they met where Ethan Sanders broke his hand. We were up comfortably at halftime. Sanders, and there was a couple other injuries in that game that led to us getting run down. So maybe, just maybe, if you believe in rugby league karma and all that sort of stuff, getting the win here might help right the season a bit. And I trust that the boys will give it a good effort to get it done.
Yeah. Look, I'll back the Eels to get their job done this week. I did expect actually not just a win, but a comfortable win last week. So I was drastically wrong with that, but I was basing it on the performance that the team put in against the near top of the table Sharks. The Tigers were sitting below the Eels last week. What I didn't count on was, there was some big units in that Tigers team, and they made full use of them in the game. So a bit of credit to the Tigers last week as well for their performance. But when you talk about a game that's only a difference of 2 points, which it was last week, if your team is a bit below what you expect them to be, you have to look at it as a lost opportunity, and that was a lost opportunity last week. So let's see a bounce back this week, even without the players. Now, New South Wales Cup, mate.
Yeah, moving on to reserve grade. 3:05 p.m. kickoff. This one is the proper curtain raiser out at Combank Stadium. Eels, and man, their draw has been brutal. They are come out of a bye following games against Newtown. Then we had Blacktown Workers, Canterbury, who were top of the table. Newtown were second. They played the Bears prior to that and managed to knock them off. But they now play, I think, the fourth place New Zealand Warriors, and the team that put 50 on them earlier in the season when they had to go over to New Zealand. So it's not been an easy run for them. They do have a few troops back this week, but it's still going to be very tough. We start at fullback. Young Artie, Arthur Miller-Stephen, is in the number one. Really keen to see how he runs around this week. Hayes Dunster and Lorenzo Mulatalo are on the flanks. Wanga Blake and Zach Sini in the centres. Dan Keir is still holding out that spot at 5'8", the poor man. Need to get him back into the back row. Jordan Rankin is the halfback. In the front row, Jonte Jr. and Befameza continues his excellent season. I think he's been one of the real shining light 60s for the New South Wales Cup. He partners Kai Rodwell in the front row. Jaden Yates is back and starts at dummy half. Jack Murchie and Matt Dury are on the flanks or the edges as the back rowers. Tony Mattelli moves into the starting team because Luca Murray's been called up to the NRL. And then on the interchange, Jacob Davis is back from what I believe was a hamstring injury, and that's good to see him there. I thought he had a good game in the New South Wales Cup last time out. Brock Parker joins him as another flag-eligible player on the interchange. Jerome Masia and Nico Apello rounded out. Just looking at this Warriors outfit as well, 60s. Braden Williami, Mawala Graham Talfa, Ronald Volkman. Anyone else I really recognise there? And Volkman's named, but there's a very good chance that he'll be caught up to the NRL with Sean Johnson sitting in on standby for the birth of his second child in New Zealand. So depending on when that happens, obviously, in the context of Saturday, Volkman could be out of his game and playing first grade.
Look, I guess the thing is that we don't know enough about the talent that's in this Warriors team. Obviously, there are names that we're not as familiar with because the first grade team has had a relatively good run when it's come to injuries. And when players have been called upon, we're seeing some familiar names out there. But there's obviously a lot of talent in this team because they're doing very well this season. As you said, towed us up in that first meeting. It's hard. It's hard to tip us getting close based on current form, isn't it? Like that's just a stark reality. We need to start strongly.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately what we've seen is when we by starting strongly, I don't mean just scoring the first try, because we've seen the Eels score an early try in recent weeks, but then just get absolutely pummeled. And it's so starting strongly means that we're really involved in the things that BA likes to see, which is that physical clash, that we're announcing ourselves as contesting the tackles, as contesting every like the we're really bringing the physicality to the carries into contact. That and again, it's that cliche that's now there about the dipping the toe in the water. Well, we're not seeing what we've missed seeing is those effort areas. Like when teams have got a run on scoring points, what we've been seeing is players, dare I say it, there's been times where it looks like the players are standing and watching the play go past them.
Yeah.
Rather than looking to get involved, rather than finding an effort area, be it diving on a loose ball, or if someone's pulling out of an attempted tackle next to them, that they're reacting quickly to the situation unfolding next to them. As I said, it's almost looked like there's been they're in the role of spectators alongside what's happening next to them. And let's face it, that's what we saw in the NRL with the likes of the Tigers and the Bulldogs. Like those defensive efforts, it's where a break's made and all of a sudden there's no scramble. There's no desperation to ankle tap a player or just to get yourself in front of a player that's coming at you. It's, there just isn't the commitment to the physicality anymore, because it's like when the score's running away from you, it just becomes, I guess, human nature. Like, what can I do? And I just feel we've seen a lot of that in the New South Wales Cup in recent weeks.
There's no doubt it's been an ugly month prior to the bye for our Cup team. Bad loss to the Newcastle Knights, hammered by the Bulldogs, who are the best team in the competition, thumped by the Blacktown Worker Seagulls, also in that 3-week stretch there. I suppose the little bit of optimism I have heading into this game was prior to the bye, yes, they got beaten 40-22 by the Newtown Jets. But if you look at that score tracking on that game, Sixties, they were actually right in the contest up until about the 58th minute, where the game sort of got run away from them from there. But the fact that they were in a contest against a very good team up until like the final quarter or just about is a marked improvement on what we've seen in the prior 3 outings there. So maybe there's something to build on from that.
What I'm concerned about, however, using Newtown as the form guide, they just got thumped, I think, by St George in the New South Wales Cup last week.
So try to make sense of that then.
I'm sure I'm right with that. I'm sure I saw that they got absolutely thumped by them. Let me go and double check. 46-12.
Jeez, what's going on in the New South Wales Cup? The Jets are one of the perennial contenders there, so they had a bad day there. But looking at the Jets team that took us on, it's pretty good.
And can I tell you, the Dragons are sitting 9th and were on equal points with the Eels, I think, last week.
I suppose that lends credence to the idea that anyone can beat anyone. So maybe the Eels can spring the big upset here. But it's going to be tough sledding. The Warriors are a good outfit. Eels are clearly struggling for both confidence and just quality in some of their positions with the players that have been caught up to the NRL, and maybe a lack of depth at certain spots as well. Realistically, the halves aren't going to get better in terms of that 5'8" spot until either Dejan is back, which is at least a month away, or Ethan Sanders gets promoted and he's on Origin duty this week. So it's going to be tough for our boys, but that's the reality that faces them.
Look, it's been no coincidence that the biggest struggles have happened since we're missing a half, and it's been releasing Jake Arthur to Manly when he led basically every metric that was out there, certainly within the Eels team, and then even across the competition. And with the Eels not sitting at the top of the table, he was still featuring in one of the leading performers in the competition. And then, that's doubled down by the fact that Dejan, the Assy man, has been called up to NRL for basically it literally coincided, didn't it, with as soon as Jake was released, next thing we need a half. We need a 5'8" in the top grade, and that became Dejan, and Dejan has done an outstanding job. But he hadn't even settled into a halves position in the New South Wales Cup.
No,
he was all over the place where he played.
Centre, fullback, in the halves. He played everywhere. And like I said, it barely settled down, and then gets to call up the NRL where he's done a fantastic job. And, again, it's a reminder that a player that might not be going great guns in Cup might step up and do a better job in first grade when they're surrounded by the stronger team. And in this case, Arcee's been fantastic. He's been so good.
We've spoken to staff, to coaches many times about that phenomena with players that can lift in a particular grade, and conversely, when they go back down, can look ordinary back in a lower grade. And it's basically playing to the level that they're at, of the team that they're in, that it just seems to happen. Like there are players who their performance is almost determined by the grade that they're playing in. And I think there's a good thing and a bad thing in that. I mean, it means that when you call upon them, when they're needed for the top grade, that that they'll give you what you need. But the other side of it is, you like to see players who, if they're an NRL standard player and they go back to lower grades, that they look like an NRL player who's in the wrong grade. That they look like they're a class above the players that they're playing alongside. And we've seen that over the years in watching lower grade games where you go, well, this player doesn't belong in this grade. And you can't understand it, whether it's one of our own players, but it's been particularly with opposition teams that we've seen. Last year seeing Jason Croker running around in New South Wales Cup for Canberra up at Kellyville. And, I watched his performance and I thought, this is a class player, and he imposed himself in that game. And I've told the story before about watching one of the Morris twins playing New South Wales Cup against Wenty over at Ringrose Park, and him putting on a masterclass. I think we've seen in the past where Josh Addo-Carr was not quite settled in first grade when he was at the West Tigers. And I think there was one game he might have scored 5 or 6 tries against Wenty. He just blasted them off the park. You looked at those games, at those players in those games, and you went, they're not New South Wales Cup players. They're NRL players playing that standard. So, and I guess maybe that's what differentiates the regular NRL player from players who get occasional matches, is that a regular NRL player, if they're dropped down to that grade, they're like, you're kidding, let me show you who I am. And you always get a quality performance. Who always managed to do that for us? Gowie.
Yeah.
I thought Gowie, when he'd play in reserve grade, he would always be amongst the best players out on the field.
Yeah, but he was definitely a cut above when you saw him down in Cup. And obviously he played some very good NRL games too, but he was one of those guys that looked like he didn't belong in Cup for good reasons. Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, thoughts on this, mate? Are they going to get anywhere near the Warriors, or are we going to make a very blunt tip on this? Look, if they're competitive on Saturday, I'll be very happy. If they're just in the contest for the majority of the game, I think that's a win. Realistically, they're short in the spine. I'm really keen to see what Artie can do at fullback after getting his feet back under him now, returning from that shoulder injury with a game under his belt and the bye to reacquaint himself with the squad again. But yeah, I mean, hopefully Jonte, Tony Mattelli, Matt Doorey, Brock Parker and Jacob Davis on the interchange, they're the players I'm looking for some spark in this game. Not to dominate, but to play good games. And someone like Jonte, he has been honestly very good this season, considering all the sort of hurdles that he's had to do up and down from Flegg to Cup. playing, for a rotating roster in the Cup itself. And then the other one that I want to give a shout out to was Tony Mattelli, who started the season really strong, had that slump as, the sort of the grind the full-time season gets to you. And I think he's turned a corner recently as well, 60s. He's really put his head down and played some good, tough football in the last few outings, even with the score getting pumped on the Eels.
Yeah. So, look, I'm probably going to, jump on your coattails there and say ditto with what you've just said. I will be happy if we get a really competitive performance out of the Eels on this one. It shouldn't be like the last game when they played the Warriors, because it was away from home, and they'll be playing in front of the early arrivals at CommBank Stadium this week. Hopefully, it means that they really put in front of the home fans, and if we can be competitive with this, and it just means that it. As you said, it was a closer contest against the Jets last week, whether they're down in form or whatever, but they got closer last week. Hopefully that's the fillip for continued improved performance this week. And with some of the young players that are being introduced to the team, let's look for them to be putting the spotlight on themselves as well as helping the team. So I'm going to tip a Warriors victory in that one, unfortunately. But now we get to the main event, the NRL contest this week.
Sacrificing our cup upon the altar of NRL victory. 5:30 p.m. kickoff here out at CommBank Stadium. Of course, it's the main event. The Parramatta Eels hosting the red-hot New Zealand Warriors. So even though they're coming off a last start loss to South Sydney, they've been such a tremendous story in 2023. We talk about that football karma stuff, but surely they're reaping some good karma for everything they sacrificed last few years for the competition. Looking at this Warriors team quickly, we got Shans Nickel-Clockstar at fullback, Dallin Watine-Zalesniak and Marcelo Montoya on the wings, Rocco Berry and Adam Pompey in the centres. Luke Metcalf and Sean Johnson named in the halves. We already mentioned that Ronald Volkman is a strong chance of coming in to replace Johnson should he stay in New Zealand for the arrival of his second child, which will also let him have a home 200th game in New Zealand next week. So that lines up really nicely for the Warriors to sort of have that double celebration of Johnson's second child and his 200th. In the front row, the outstanding Adam Fanua-Blake and Bunty Afoa on the shoulders of Wade Egan, Jackson Ford, Mitchell Barnett and Tohu Harris. The ageless Tohu Harris, he's so good in the back row there. On the interchange, Dylan Walker, Bailey Sirinen, Tom Arley, and Freddie Lussick. Extended roster, Braden Williami, Ronald Volkman, Kalani Going, Zion Ma'au, Tane Tuapiki. That's their roster, their 60s. Anyone that really jumps out to you, given how well they're playing?
Look, I guess it's that, I've got a lot of time for their coach and what he's achieved.
Webster,
with the team.
He's got to be the front runner for Coach of the Year.
Oh, absolutely.
Because one day BA will get his flowers, but right now I think it's Webster.
I mean, there's been a couple of new inclusions to the team, but aside from that, they're fairly familiar names to us from last season, and obviously it only takes a couple of key ins like Chance Nickel-Clockstar at fullback is a key in for them there, and and I guess as well seeing Dylan Walker as that utility off the bench, he's provided a bit of value there, but the improved performance from Sean Johnson, that can't be, you can't ignore that. That's just been absolutely out of the box. And the thing is, the team is playing a much more composed brand of football. I wouldn't say that they're playing like Penrith in terms of, whether that Webster's brought Penrith structures or anything like that. He's just taken the carelessness that seemed to be so typical of Warriors football, if that makes sense. That it was almost that you were waiting for a brain explosion or something that was unnecessary in their games in previous seasons. And I know, and you know what, to an extent I'm going back to pre-COVID, because I don't know how well you could judge the Warriors during their COVID impacted years.
Yeah, exactly. There was so much on their shoulders on and off the field, or what they were being burdened with away from home.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is like, it's almost been like, I mean, you could use the term rebuild of the Warriors, but I think that, there's probably a better term to come up with for it, because, the players, there's a familiarity, as I said, with the players, but it's almost like they've been reprogrammed. Maybe that's what I should be saying about them. It's been a reprogramming of them. And whether it's just simply been that they've been able to be home, whether it's been that they've got a quality coach or a coach that knows how to get the best performance out of them. Now, the question then that has to be asked is, their loss last week to the Rabbitohs, I didn't see coming. I didn't see
not the magnitude of it. Yeah, that Souths were competitive. Okay, but yeah, Souths really ran away with that one.
Yeah, and so there's a part of me that goes, is that the start of, like it's a long season and they've done well to this point, but they're not quite a finals team? Is that what we're getting? And I don't know that you could necessarily judge it based on, like, if they get a win against Parra this week, I don't know that you could necessarily answer that question yet, because of the fact that Parramatta's got so many key players that are out at the moment. And I'm not setting up for an excuse for the Eels in any way, shape or form at the moment, because I'm going to tip an Eels victory, and I'm going to tip an Eels victory quite honestly with that, and that's not tipping with the heart. But I look at the Warriors team and I go, you know what? Playing above themselves. Like, I keep ticking the box that says playing above themselves.
It's an industrious backline, I think. DWZ and Montoya alongside Nickel Clockstar really just start their set strongly, and that really lays a platform.
Let me you've just pointed out DWZ and Montoya, so I'll throw this question to you: are they in the best form of their career right now?
100%. Darwin Watine he is enjoying an incredibly rich run of form, and he's playing fantastically. And Montoya's probably been a guy that's been a little bit slept on for a few years. I thought he was pretty handy at Canterbury, and then he went to the Warriors and has really found himself there and elevated his game. They're one of the better winger pairings on the balance of things in 2023. They've been really good for the Warriors, and a big part of why their resurgence has been so consistent. And obviously you're throwing stars like Johnson, Fanor Blake, and whatnot, and they're the guys that will help you seal the deal alongside Nickel Clockstar. But those two wingers have been really important for what the Warriors have done in 2023.
Yep. Adam Fanua Blake, is he up near some of the best form of his career?
Yeah, well, I was really down on Fanua Blake because obviously at Manly he was one of the sort of young dominant forwards in the game. And he went to the Warriors and really faded. Really, I don't know what happened, whether it was coaching or just the COVID stuff impacted him really heavily. But his game looked like it wilted. And what we're seeing in 2023 is pretty much what I expected of him in those last few years. And he's been back to his best. And he is really in that Junior Barlow mold of being a game-wrecking prop forward, really dominant through post-contact, can slip a real dangerous offload. You really got to be keyed into him when he's got the ball or near the ball through the middle.
Yeah, and Bunty Afoa, if he was running around in a blue and gold jersey, I reckon he'd be an absolute fan favourite.
First of all,
the way he plays the game, and also his name.
Yeah,
think
Bunty's a great name, and he's got the big mop of hair, runs like a maniac. Yeah, you could imagine him endearing himself to fans very quickly in the blue and gold. Real sort of cult favourite sort of player.
Almost in the Fui
yeah,
mold.
Exactly. Very, very similar to Fui, and obviously Fui's at the absolute top tier of that sort of list. But yeah, Bunty is all energy, brings plenty of that every game, and that can really galvanise a forward pack. So they're just a well-balanced team, the Warriors. They've got a couple of strike players, really led by Sean Johnson, who's enjoying a fantastic season. So if he is out, that is a big boon for the Eels. But on the flip side, once we do talk about Parramatta, you mentioned the 60s, but we're down plenty of troops as well.
Yeah. So just running through our team, mate.
Yeah, well, Sean Russell, not to the surprise of anyone, I think, really has, quote-unquote, won the battle to be the replacement fullback, or the King's Hand, as we talked about on the NRL News podcast. Mike Acevo and Isaac Lumi are on the flanks. Now, that one was probably the big surprise of the team list. Lumi in over Dunster and Blake. We can talk about that shortly, but let's get through the rest of the team. Penasini and Simonson both in outstanding form, even if Will wasn't considered for State of Origin. We talked about that. No need to go on about it. But in the halves, as we expected, no Moses, no Brown means Arcee and Madison reuniting after their heroics against the Manly Seagulls a few weeks back. In the front row, Ogden comes in for Reagan Campbell-Gillard. Junior Barlow is back after he was sensationally cut by the Blues hierarchy. They'll work alongside Brendan Hands in the front row. Bryce Cartwright, Andrew Davey named to start. I'll have to wait and see whether Sean Lane's an inclusion for the starting roster on game day for Davey. But right now, named to start those two. Jermaine Hopgood, he is in Queensland camp, but will play for the Eels. He's the lock forward. On the interchange, Luca Moretti, Joe Ofangahi, Sean Lane, and Makasi Makatoa. That is a big bench. Plenty of big boppers there. Dunster, Blake, Rodwell, Dury, and Murchie round out the extended roster. And Adam G, not Andrew G. Adam G is the main official. Drew Ultram and Ziggy Preslaska Adamski are on the flanks. Casey Badger is in the box. 5:30 p.m. kickoff. Catch this one on if you're not out there, 60s, you can get it on Foxtel and KO. But no reason not to be out there for one of the rare sort of enjoyable Saturday slots that we get for the Eels.
Yeah. Okay. So let's get straight to the point with a couple of the selections. It fits in with BA's model where he doesn't like to have disruptions to key spots if he's having to replace a player. He needed to bring up someone with Gutherson being gone. There wasn't a natural fullback that he could bring in to do the job in place of Clint Gutherson. So the only thing he could do was, I guess, the minimal disruption, which was he's got an experienced fullback or relatively experienced fullback on the wing in Sean Russell. He gets the wing spot. That means his choice is who to bring in on the wing in his place out of Isaac Lumi, Hayes Dunster, and Wonga Blake. Wonga's only just returning from injury. Hayes he's really been trying to find his full fitness and his confidence this season. We knew it was going to be a tough year for Hayes coming back from that horrific injury last year. He's gone for Lumi. He's a wing specialist. He's been having to play a little bit of centre due to the lack of centres in New South Wales Cup. So, I guess there is a question mark about how Lumi is going to perform. Now, whether the Warriors decide to target him and Sean, I think there's a fair bet that they will. I think there'll be kicks that will go up towards that side of the field that will ask questions and obviously ask questions of both of them, because they'll probably look to land it in that no man's land of who's going to go for the ball. And it'll be interesting to see how they go, because we did have Sean had his issues when he first came back up into first grade, didn't he? With the high ball.
I don't think he's dropped one. Knock on wood. I don't know if you can hear that, but it's me knocking on my oak desk there. But he hasn't dropped one for a long time. He's been very good under the high ball since getting back in the first grade. But there's no doubt that they're going to come after him.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, in the forwards, still plenty of strength there. So I don't think we need to be overly concerned. That really the main impact has been that Jermaine Hopgood hasn't been available for match prep because he's been involved with the Queensland team. He gets released to come back and play for the Eels on Saturday. He's been part of the run-on team for the entire season. So how much he needed to be involved in the prep is is questionable. I guess the only thing that he's missed out on a little bit was the specifics around preparing for the Warriors. You would imagine he's probably done his due diligence and watched plenty of footage. He would have been probably sent any footage that was cut up as part of the Eels tip sheet.
Mm-hmm.
So he would have been privy to that. He's probably had conversations with BA and Trent Barrett and Murph about what's going to happen around attack. I watched training the other day. Obviously, I'm not going to say too much about it, but it was just interesting listening to the coaches instruct the players about what the Warriors are likely to throw at them, and what just some of the goals that they've set themselves in both attack and defence. So the team are in a confident headspace, and I think that's really important. I think what we'll see is something not dissimilar to what we saw against Manly.
Yeah, chasing a record 6 straight win under Brad Arthur's guidance. We've gotten to 5 wins in a row, I believe 3 times if I'm not mistaken, and I think this will be the first time we get to 6 should we secure the victory on Saturday night.
So what are we looking for? High completion rates.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not kicking from deep in our own half. We'll be looking at a lot of patience and composure in attack, not looking to overplay the hand, looking to keep the game down at the Warriors' end of the field, building pressure, not trying to score off every play, but by the same token, being prepared to chance their hand a bit, once you do get into that red zone. So, it's that balance, isn't it, of making sure you complete the set, but you don't waste your opportunities down there by throwing something out that you haven't earned.
Yeah, and in a way, that game against Manly is really the blueprint for what we need to do on Saturday. With RC and Madison just running the show without overplaying their hands. No Gufferson, though, does change the structure a little bit. Guffer was excellent in that game, as he has been for the vast majority of 2023, been in outstanding form. You're looking to Sean Russell to somehow bridge that gap, working as the deputy for Guffo. Being patient, calm, disciplined is going to go a long way on Saturday, because that's what the Warriors are going to bring to the table. They're going to be working for the completions, working for the corners, playing the percentage football, and then taking their shots from there. So if you can beat them in the arm wrestle, and the Eels have the forwards to do it, and the strike in the back line to capitalise, alongside those back row weapons. Bryce Cartwright in fantastic form. I think he's going to be an important point of difference in this contest. Be patient, but take your shots when they present themselves. And I think we can win and win well on Saturday.
Yeah, and look, I think we'll see maybe not so much of the kicks, but running it on the last.
Yeah, I mean, that was a feature of that Manly game, wasn't it?
Yeah.
After Matto gave away that first 7 tackled set off the boot, was, okay, let's just streamline it. We're happy to turn it over 5-10 metres out and back our defence to hold firm. And then we'll get more opportunities to attack at other times. So I do think that's going to be another feature of our game plan 60s, is running in the ball if we're not going to go through the air off the boot.
Yep. So, okay, let's now get to the pointy end. Score, best on field, and first try scorer.
Yeah, I'm going to tip a pretty solid Parramatta win here if Sean Johnson is out. If he's in, that it's going to narrow things considerably, but I'm assuming he's out at this stage. I'm going to go Eels 36-16 victors in this one.
Yeah, I'm going to go 26-14 victory to the Eels. And first try scorer, look, I think it's going to come around the edge. I said to the other boys yesterday, recording the Parra podcast, that I feel like the smart money's on one of the back rowers. We've been attacking via those channels, but I went Sean Russell. Okay. Yep. Well, it could be on a sweep on the edge. So, look, I'm going to go with Cardi to get first try scorer there, and best on field, mate.
I got 2 candidates here for similar but different reasons. One, the breakout star of 2023, Jermaine Hopgood, coming back from Queensland camp, fired up, motivated, galvanised to have a huge game to, remind Billy of why he should have just put him into the Origin team in general. I think he's going to have a great game. But 2, the player that was cut from State of Origin this week, Junior Barlow, I think he's going to be violent. I mean, he's going to have a big game. He's going to be out there to prove to Freddie that he got it wrong. So I think Junior's my guy here.
Yeah. Oh, look, do you know what? I'm going to back you. Junior best on field also.
Yeah. He's been building nicely at club level for the last couple of weeks, and I think this is a game where there's plenty of catalyst in action for him to be as fired up as he's ever going to get outside of playing for, in the grand final. He was done pretty dirty this week, and he's got plenty left in the tank to show for the Parramatta Eels that he was the right guy to be in camp, and I hope that the Warriors are the ones that he's going to take it out on.
Look, I think we're going to see plenty of Eels fans out there on Saturday to enjoy that late Saturday afternoon, early evening match. We'll see you out there at Parramatta Leagues Club after the game up in Jack's Bar and Grill for our Instant Reaction podcast. Be sure to get up there, help us to celebrate the Eels' victory over the Warriors, have a drink, a feed, lots of footy talk, as I said. Thank you again to our sponsors, Big Swing Golf Northmead and Star Partners Real Estate Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta. Thank you for listening to us in our podcast. Thank you, 40, for today. And one final thing, go you mighty Eels.
Yes, sir. Catch you guys in the next episode.